What's up YouTube, my name is Byrdman778 and welcome to another Outriders build video. Today I'm covering my new co-op focused build that is really great for either CT15 solo runs, co-op runs, but regardless it will essentially get you gold. And the reason why it does this is because it does a lot of debuffing. Now, this is something for Devastator that's really hard to find, but this one specific mod obviously really helps with it, especially when it works correctly. But before I get into that, I'll let you know I'm more likely streaming right now on Twitch, twitch.tv/Byrdman778. Start every single day starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We sometimes have some night streams, but normally every single day at 10 a.m. Make sure you're stopping by and checking out. I've been doing a lot of CT15 carries on the stream, so if you want to hop on in, get pushed through some stuff and play with a streamer, stop on by. Make sure you're subbing over here on YouTube, dropping a thumbs up if you like the video, and also stopping by my Twitter, twitter.com/Byrdman778 for some super subpar memes and just general information. Now, let's get on to the video. Now, I mentioned this is a co-op focused build, but at the same time, it can be something that you can do on your own. Why? Because certain weapons that we have, certain pieces of armor, really help mid-max to that point. I will give suggestions for other weapons and other armor pieces that you can use instead of these specific mid-max pieces of gear. But starting off with the weapons themselves, we're going to be using a Roaring Umbra. Now, the Roaring Umbra is an awesome LMG. It has arm-piercing round, status power, and close-range damage, but we like this a lot because it spawns in with the mod Kinetic Stomp. Shots create a seismic shock around you, dealing 232,000 damage in a 5-meter radius as a 4-second cooldown. This is amazing because essentially all we have to do is just create shots on an enemy, and then the seismic pulse will happen around us, dealing damage. Now, this is going to happen to the guy in front of you, the guy beside you, everyone around. So this is always great for a Devastator, especially for the fact you should be constantly in the thick of it all the time. We also have Fortress on there because we're going to get that 43% damage bonus based on our armor. Now, we already have high armor on this build, but also adding the fact that this is going to boost our firepower, our anomaly power, just our damage that we're doing in general. So we liked having Fortress. If you were to use a different gun instead of this, I would recommend maybe like a Funeral Pyre where you can get Shadow Comet, something like that. Anything that's just going to do constant damage on a low cooldown, I think is probably the best thing to do. Now, going into our second weapon, we're obviously using the Nimoy. Automatic shotgun with armor piercing, healing received, and close range damage. But we essentially call the Nimoy the Moaning Winds because that's all this gun is really good for, is that top mod, Moaning Winds. Reloading creates a strong blast around you, dealing 387,000 damage to enemies in a range of 8 meters as an 8-second cooldown. This is great to have as your off weapon. Maybe whenever you activate Kinetic Stomp, you swap over real quick to your Nimoy so that Moaning Winds activates. You just want to make sure that you clear out the clip, change it back over, and then just constantly kind of do that refresh without letting the mag completely refill. Now, we comboed this with Radiation Splash, which we found on the Guillotine. Reloading causes a small explosion that inflicts vulnerable and deals 122,000 damage to enemies in a 5-meter radius as a 6-second cooldown. This is great because essentially it's going to help us debuff enemies even further by inflicting that vulnerable, making sure that you're getting that 15% more damage. Now, going over the armor pieces, obviously on the top part, you see that Seismic Commander helmet. This is probably for every Devastator out there, one of the biggest finds to get. And we've kind of min-maxed this in a way that's kind of interesting. But before I get into that, I want to let you know that this has Anomaly Power, Status Power, and Skilled Life Leech. Now, 4 shards for any piece of armor you're running for this build. The 4 I'd recommend the most is going to be that Anomaly Power, that Status Power. Then I would say cooldown reduction is the most important as like a third. And then finally that Skill Life Leech. But Skill Life Leech isn't bad in regardless. Like it's going to benefit you a lot anyway. But with this one, on that top perk, we have Unstoppable Force. Now, this is going to be found on the Reforged Gloves. For a Pyro, you can get the Reforged Gloves from Tiago. He sells it for some drop pod resources, but you essentially just want to put that in your stash, transfer it over to your Devastator, dismantle it, and get this mod because it increases your anomaly power by 50% of your resistance piercing. Because of a certain skill node that we have in our class tree, we're going to be able to constantly get our resistance piercing near 100%, essentially giving us 50% more anomaly power. We're already at 165,000 anomaly power with this. This is like the highest I've been able to get my Devastator period across the board at all. So definitely really great to have that Unstoppable Force mod. You're going to be noticing most Devastators using this nowadays. Now, the reason why we really needed this specific Seismic Commander helmet instead of maybe this one that I have over here where I have Ultimate Impaler on it is because it spawns in with that mod Bloodshot. Bloodshot, Earthquake inflicts bleed on enemies damaged by the skill, essentially giving us that free perk where we're able to use our Earthquake and inflict bleed on enemies. Now, speaking of bleed, we are using the Seismic Commander set, so we're getting that increased damage towards enemies with bleed by 50%. This is going to essentially make sure that we're constantly doing more damage to enemies that are inflicted with bleed. It's essentially just making it easy mode for you. Next, we're using the Seismic Commander armor. This one has anomaly power, status power, and cooldown reduction. And we're using that top mod. We're swapping that out and using Despair. Now, since we're using Gravity Leap on this build and we're using this as a debuff build, this is a perfect mod. Because Gravity Leap, enemies within a damage radius of Gravity Leap will receive a 1.5 times more anomaly damage for 5 seconds, essentially assuring that we're going to be doing a shit ton of anomaly damage to our enemies with this big bonus we have here, comboed with an Unstoppable Force, essentially making sure as well if we're in a co-op situation, our teammates are going to be able to do more damage as well. You're going to be noticing in a lot of the different clips in this video, I'm either doing the solo or in co-op, and we're just absolutely melting enemies. It's awesome. I love this. But we're also using Earth's Legacy, increase the skill range of Earthquake by 60%, essentially making sure that we're just getting a longer distance with this. Surprisingly enough, this is kind of more of a luxury skill in my opinion for Devastator. It's not exactly necessary, but it definitely helps out, especially the fact that we're able to fluently swap out that top mod, which is usually Palisade on the Seismic Commander armor, and still have a pretty good perk on the bottom. Next up, we have Seismic Commander leg armor. This one's anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction. It spawns in with that top mod, Tainted Blood. Now, Tainted Blood is awesome because it gives us an extra 25% damage to bleeding targets. Combo that along with the Seismic Commander set bonus, we're doing a lot of extra damage to bleeding targets. Now, I also put power assimilation on the bottom of this. Boost your anomaly power by 11,000 for each elite present on the battlefield. I think this is really important. I've had suggestions of using Anomaly Echo instead, so we are always constantly having that 11,000, no matter whether there's elites on the battlefield or not. But I think also with this build, just the fact that most maps will usually spawn in at least like 2 elites in on at a time, essentially gives us that ability to constantly have that high anomaly power, extra 22,000 at least, and especially in some maps like Frontline where you're getting multiple waves of 4 or more elites at the same time, you're constantly having that huge anomaly boost, essentially ensuring that your Earthquake or Gravity Leap are going to do more damage. Next, we're running just a purple set of gloves, doesn't matter what they are, just make sure they got this anomaly power. This one is close range. If I could, I'd swap these out, but this one was just such a good pair of gloves, I didn't want to change it. And cooldown reduction. With Ground Crush, Earthquake increases skills damage by 84,000. Essentially just making sure we're doing more damage with our Earthquake because that's going to be our bread and butter skill. And then Extra Quake, making sure we're getting extra use of Earthquake. And then finally, our boots, just a general pair of purple boots with anomaly power, cooldown reduction, status power. This was such a good pair of boots. I did that whenever I got these. I swapped out the top mod for second Quake, making sure we're getting that third use of Earthquake. And then Untamed Power. This is such a good ability. Using skills deals 49,000 damage to enemies within a 5-meter radius around you, and its damage is equal to 30% of your anomaly power. We have stupid high anomaly power, essentially making sure that this is going to do a shit ton of damage. But also, skill is melee, your actual skill ability, so Earthquake, Gravity Leap, even just activating Golem around us activates that, essentially ensuring that we're constantly activating this Untamed Power ability. Now, I mentioned before if I had to swap out pieces of gear, if you aren't able to get certain pieces, I think the biggest culprit of this is the Seismic Commander helmet. I would say run the cranium of a lost creature. This is a great one because it has those same top bonuses of anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and skilled life leech. It spawns in with power assimilation, so you can just kind of swap around stuff if you need to. But until I got this other Seismic Commander helmet, this is what I ran on the build. For your skills, you're running Earthquake, Golem, Gravity Leap. Earthquake releases Shockwave, dealing 182,000 damage and interrupts all enemies in front of you. Has a 6.9 second cooldown. Golem, fortify yourself against 65% of incoming damage. Has a 16 second cooldown. And then Gravity Leap, leap into the air and strike your targets from above, dealing 131,000 damage, interrupting enemies with a small radius around you, and has a 12 second cooldown. All these are important for this build, especially Gravity Leap, and the fact that you need that to activate Despair. Now, I keep talking about Despair and the fact that it's important for this build because it helps us with that debuffing. Despair is currently not working as intended with another mod, Double Jump. You could essentially get 3 times more anomaly damage with Double Jump, but it's not currently working. Whenever that does come around, I would recommend in this skill tree swapping out Power Assimilation for that Double Jump. This is essentially going to make sure you're getting a 3 times boost and also doing up to 260,000 damage with the double Gravity Leap. So until then, until it's fixed, until we have confirmation, just use 1 Gravity Leap. Once we find out more, use 2. That's what I would recommend. Going to our skill tree, we're going to be using all 5 of these anomaly reservoirs here, 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 and here, making sure we're getting 30% extra anomaly damage. We're going to be using both these endless tremors here and here, ensuring that we're getting 30% extra cooldown to our seismic ability, so that's going to be our earthquake. We are going to use Paladin, so that whenever we activate Golem, we're getting a 45% boost to our anomaly damage. This is huge. This is really great for either offensively, going at enemies, making sure we're going into that fight with a lot of damage, or making sure that, hey, whenever we activate Golem in a defensive way, we're going to have that 65% damage mitigation and be AO good. Unending Watch, essentially making sure that our Golem is coming up faster. Strong Armor of the Anomaly, this is the one that I said works well with Unstoppable Force. After using a class melee skill, increase resistance piercing by 15% for each enemy hit for 10 seconds. Now, this comboed along with both these 2 pure anomalies here and here that we're going to be using, essentially making sure that 1, we're getting 30% resistance piercing, so 15% extra anomaly damage, and then anybody we hit is essentially just more anomaly damage on top of that. This is an absolute important skill you have to do, and also make sure you're just constantly meleeing around you. That's not only going to activate Untamed Power, but it's going to make sure that this Strong Armor of the Anomaly is going to get us that extra anomaly power for our Earthquake and just our melee in general. We're using this 1 Perpetual Motion, making sure that we're getting our Gravity back a little bit faster. Strong Arm in the Law, doubling our damage or class melee skill, making sure our melee is doing more damage. Executioner, increased damage by 20% against enemies below 30% health. Essentially, whenever those enemies hit that 30% threshold, you're going to be doing more damage immediately. Rejuvenation, increase your skill leech by 6%. Now, normally I would say this is just a skill that is essentially going to get you through the tree, but as of this video right now, Blood Donation down here is not activating as intended. So having skill life leech in your build is really important, essentially making sure that whenever you activate a skill, it hits an enemy, it's going to give you health, but also the fact that inflicting bleed on enemies, which is considered a status, which would go off of that skill life leech, is essentially giving you health back. Whenever it comes back, I would say absolutely go in Blood Donation, but I've actually proven with this build and many other builds recently that Blood Donation isn't really necessary. You can go into some other stuff throughout this tree and kind of skip this step. It's definitely doable. I would also say it's definitely doable because of 2 different skills right back to back. Protected by the Anomaly, increase your armor bonus by 40% of your anomaly power, essentially making sure we have high armor all the time because of our stupid high anomaly power. And also the fact Skilled Sentry, increase armor by 20% and resistances by 20% for 10 seconds when your skill ends. So activating Gravity Leap, activating Golem, activating Earthquake, anytime it ends, we're essentially going to immediately get that bonus armor and resistance and making sure we're going to be staying alive longer. I wouldn't do this extra bloodbath. I would say you could probably go into like Stone Circle if you wanted to, or that other rejuvenation here. But just doing a little bit more damage to bleed inflected targets isn't too bad. And then finally, Earth's Heritage, increase seismic skills, base damage by 50%, making sure that that bread and butter skill being our Earthquake will be doing more damage. Thanks so much for stopping by this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I really like this build for co-op or solo play as well. You're going to be noticing me using this probably a lot more, especially once Despair is completely fixed and we're able to get that 3 times more anomaly damage. Just because, one, it's going to make sure that Earthquake is just doing stupid amount of damage, especially to bosses over anything. But also the fact that it's just great for co-op play. Whenever we're doing these carries on my stream, I'm able to make sure that all the homies in my group are able to do more damage and just have a more cohesive synergy amongst everybody. But again, I'm always streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Byrdman778. Make sure you're stopping on by, checking out all these awesome builds, 10 a.m. every single stinking day. So stop on by. Make sure you're dropping a thumbs up on this video. Let me know what you think. And regardless, hope you guys have a great night, day, whatever it may be. No, cut that. Don't use. Have a great night, day, whatever it may. No, that's awful.